Sometimes the protagonist of a game is what we like to call a chatty Cathy, and this isn't always great. Other times when a voice is coming out of their mouth, it's fantastic.
Liar. That nervous glance. That scared look in your eyes.
Same goes for when there's no voice. Sometimes it's brilliant, and sometimes it's a puzzling choice. So is there a right way to do things? Which is better, voiced or silent? Is one better? Buckle up, because the answer to this one is probably going to cause an argument or two. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on GameRanx we ask the question, what kind of protagonist is better? Silent versus voiced? Okay, so I'm gonna save you a bunch of trouble if you're actually expecting me to hard say one is better. The question itself is more contentious, I think, than the answer. We tend to do a little bit more exploration of the topic than tell you what to like and what not to, and that's exactly what we're going to do here. Now, there's a lot of people who specifically like silent protagonists, and it makes sense. Even within certain series, oftentimes the better game is the original one where they didn't add a voice to the character. If you talk to a lot of people, that's how BioShock is. Jack is not as fleshed out a character as Booker DeWitt, and yet some people enjoy being Jack because it's more of a create your own adventure. There are certainly hard plot points that you can't avoid, but Booker DeWitt has an almost exact backstory. There's a couple of variations because of multi-worlds theory, and not because of you, the player. And in the minds of some, it's much more preferable to be Booker DeWitt. I'll tell you my preference, although I have lots of issues with the story itself and how it wraps up. I much prefer playing as Booker DeWitt. I like having a character to conform to and attempting to make choices in a way that I feel makes that character more interesting, as opposed to creating one from scratch. But that doesn't mean I like voice versus silent protagonists more, because frankly, Dead Space 1 destroys Dead Space 2. It eats Dead Space 2 for lunch. Not that Dead Space 2 is bad, Dead Space 1 is brilliant though. It is a game that stands up today. And I remember Dead Space 2 primarily because it was more Dead Space and I wanted more Dead Space. I do not even remember what Isaac Clarke sounds like though, so that's probably a large point as to why at least some people like silent protagonists. It just gives one less thing to screw up. But a well-acted, well-developed, actually cognizant of character development and narrative arc, realized character is interesting. Like I said, I do prefer Booker DeWitt to Jack. I do prefer John and Jack Marston to a nameless cowboy that I fill out the details myself. However, plot me into Mass Effect and there's some changes. Shepard is a brilliant synthesis of these two types of characters. You get just enough customization to make the character your own, but the character also has a narrative arc. In fact, a lot of narrative arcs that depend a lot on how you act within the game. Maybe not as much as humanly possible. I'm sure that a game will tackle the idea with more detail someday in the future, but keeping in mind that newer doesn't mean better, as of course Mass Effect Andromeda exists. What is it really that matters when we're talking about voice versus silent? Well, in my opinion, I think that whether one prefers one or the other is dependent mostly on what a person gets immersed by. When you're an utterly silent protagonist, oftentimes choices are more mechanical and don't have dialogue associated with them. And not having dialogue associated with them can give a choice the benefit of seeming less cheesy. You have to work out the rationale on your own. You have to think about which one sounds more like what you want to do without the benefit of words that we associate with definite meanings. And I can easily see why some people are more immersed this way. It involves a lot more thought processes and asks you specifically to understand the circumstances as a participant. An advantage I definitely believe a silent protagonist has above a voiced one is the player is not an actor, at least in the Hollywood sense. If you wanted to use the word actor to describe the player in a a silent protagonist situation, it's a definition that has more to do with participation, a member or contributor in the situation, one who partakes or shares as opposed to one who is performing. And that is actually, I think, what the difference between these two things is. When someone is a voiced protagonist, that person is performing. That person is the theatrical or dramatic version of an actor, albeit without the need to actually learn how to act, obviously. And again, there are people that are more immersed by doing this. Like I said, if both are good, if we're talking about a good silent protagonist versus a good voice protagonist, I would pick the voiced one because this is actually what immerses me personally a bit more. I enjoy the performance aspects of narrative gaming. I think it's interesting to attempt to be a different person as opposed to create a different person. Now, this is something that is entirely up to taste because it's easy to see, in my opinion, why creating a person from scratch would also be an interesting way to go. And the reason for that is because you define that person, you define their personality. If the game is handling a silent protagonist correctly, in theory, the way that person is entirely open-ended. It's hard for me not to understand the kind of potential that somebody sees in that. So really, that ultimately leaves us with two extremely different camps. And again, it's Zelda versus Grand Theft Auto. And even with Grand Theft Auto, if you really don't want to mess around with the narrative and the voice protagonist stuff, you kind of can forego it entirely if you want. But at the same time, can you imagine Metal Gear with Snake just never talking? I cannot. So with that in mind, it's okay to have your own personal preference. I get why you would want one or the other. It's a matter of what you want out of a game. Understanding that can also help you get more out of a game, and also in some cases help you save a little bit of time. Oh, and the best example of a silent protagonist, by the way, is Coder. Nothing's ever going to beat that. I have a feeling people are going to contest that, but whatever. What are you thinking about this? What kind of protagonist do you like better? Leave us a comment, let us know what you're thinking about and why. And if you like this video, please click like. If you want to see our videos, which we upload brand new every single day, click the subscribe button and do not forget to click the notification bell. As always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter at Falcon the Hero. We'll see you next time, right here on gameranx.